The 2022 Subaru Outback Wilderness. 10 best features on the Outdoorsy crossover. In the 90s, Subaru was experimenting with a lot of things. In 1995, it took the legacy station wagon, added in plenty of cladding, dual-tone paint, and shortened it to make the Outback. Initially, the Outback was a subbrand of the legacy, but today, the legacy is nothing but a distant memory while the Outback is carrying on the good work. That said, the Outback is not always all that Outback-ish when it comes to the outdoors. It's more sporty in outlook but always a city dweller, although you'll find plenty of these doing outdoorsy stuff. So now, Subaru has decided to up the ante, and make the outdoorsiest Outback ever, the 2022 Subaru Outback Wilderness. But how wild and outdoorsy is the Outback Wilderness really? And how does it stand pitched against the outdoorsiest Jeep there is, the Wrangler? Here are all the adventurous features of the 2022 Subaru Outback Wilderness and why it's plenty wild enough for us. 10. First, can we talk looks? If you compare the Outback and the Outback Wilderness, you'd straightaway see a few differences in the looks alone. The front fascia is more streamlined, akin to you rolling up those pants to cross a stream. You now get plastic cladding extending up the nose and above the wheel wells to protect the paint. Instead of the Outback's chrome, the Wilderness is all black, and all the important actionable points such as tow hooks, roof rail tie-downs, and more come in bright copper, giving the Wilderness a sassy glint. 9. The Wilderness rides higher. If you see the two cars, the Outback and Outback Wilderness standing side by side, you will notice that the Wilderness rides higher. And it's by 0.8 inches, for a total of 9.5 inches of ground clearance. Something you'd thank your stars for if going off-roading. Frankly, the Outback Wilderness rides almost as high as the Jeep Wrangler Sport, although the latter boasts a 9.7-inch ground clearance, having 0.2 inches over and above the Wilderness. It may not be much, but the higher suspension is a good step ahead. 8. The Wilderness is still no match for the Wrangler. The normal Outback bears an 18.6-degree approach angle, a 19.4-degree ramp breakover angle, and a departure angle of 21.7 degrees. The Outback Wilderness stands better at 20.0, 21.2, and 23.6 degrees, so there is a bit of improvement when it comes to off-roading. That said, the Wrangler is a far cry from the Wilderness, with a 41.4-degree approach angle, a 20.3 breakover, and a 36.1-degree departure angle, proving why it is way more adept at rock climbing and being wilder than the Wilderness. 7. The driving modes of the Wilderness help. The Wilderness boasts an off-road X mode with 2 drivability options. There's a snow, dirt mode that keeps wheel spin to a minimum, perfect for slick and slippery uphill climbs. The second mode is a deep snow, mud mode that allows more wheel spin to avoid the car getting stuck in things deep and sticky. The X mode also recognizes when the Wilderness is on a decline and controls vehicle speed depending on the input received by the brakes, reducing speed to as low as 5 miles per hour if it encounters gravel or loose surface. 6. Better wheels and a spare. Since the 2022 Subaru Outback Wilderness comes riding higher, it also wears better wheels. Each Wilderness comes riding on 225 65ths R-17 Yokohama Geolandar AT wheels, and as compared to the other outdoor models, this is way more aggressively outdoor. Since this is a car Subaru wants you to go off-roading with, they have also put in a full-size spare under the cargo hold floor, meaning if you ever have to use the spare, the performance does not suffer. 5. The Wilderness carries its own weight and more. The 2022 Subaru Outback Wilderness comes with a tow rating of 3,500 pounds, which means if you have a boat, the Wilderness is only too happy to haul it for you. And the coolest bit of the Outback Wilderness is the roof rack, which comes redesigned to haul up to 220 pounds, when in motion. It can support 700 pounds while standing still, which means if you want to camp on top of the Wilderness and pitch your tent on the roof, you can. Just don't decide to drive with the tent on top. The Outback Wilderness is not all that wild. Yet. 4. The power and the ride of the Wilderness. The The 2022 Subaru Outback Wilderness runs on Subaru's loyal 2.4-liter flat-4 engine that comes turbocharged for 260 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque, which is enough, but not mind-blowing. The transmission is a CVT, plus the Outback Wilderness is equipped with an all-wheel drive, with a shortened final drive ratio of 4.44:1. The CVT lags a bit on steep drives and takeoff isn't very punchy. It makes for a good ride, just a slightly dulled and muted one. But then the Wilderness is not the kind of car you want to race down highways in. 3. The Outback Wilderness has some outdoorsy interiors. The fabric inside is the Subaru Startix, which repels water and comes in dark colors to avoid any muddy marks and streaks from wet people and dogs alike. It does repeat the copper accents from the outside and comes with an 11.6-inch vertical touchscreen along with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Plus, Subaru also brings in all the driver aids it has. The cargo area and seatback are also waterproof, so basically, if you get in the Wilderness squelchy and wet, it will forgive you. Seat heaters are optional as well, and comfort levels are cool. 2. The aesthetics, price and usefulness. The front grille of the Outback Wilderness is all jazzed up and has some sassy hexagonal fog lights, with almost Aztec-like plastic cladding to protect the paint. It also boasts an anti-glare flat black hood decal, which we are very sure about. It starts at $38,120, which makes it a rather expensive Outback model, but one that can come very handy for you if going off the beaten track is your kind of driving. That said, the 2022 Subaru Outback Wilderness can only do so much because it's not a Wrangler, period. 1. Is the Wilderness all that wild? The Outback Wilderness manages to drive smooth, almost like a plush Outback, and comes with a slender skid plate. The X mode makes sure that the car remains stable despite the terrain, and remains enabled at speeds greater than 25 miles per hour. That said, because it does so much, the fuel economy has reduced, down to 22 mpg city, 26 mpg highway and 24 mpg combined. For an added $1,845, you can also get the loan option package with a moonroof in place to look at the stars once you have crossed the mountain. Ain't that wild?